Fáilte. My name is Andrew Healy and I'm a lover and drinker of Irish whiskey. I'm on a journey of discovery to learn as much as I can about the great spirit of the Emerald Isle. Along that journey, I'm lucky enough to meet other people who are passionate about Irish whiskey, and the My Favourite Irish podcast is their story and their favourite Irish whiskey. Whether that's their current favourite, their first ever dram, or one that has a special place in their life. On this episode, I got to spend some time. Actually, it was some pretty special time with the one and only William Glass, better known to some of you online as Nevada Drams. William invited me to his bar in northern Nevada back in late January of 2024 as I was starting a 6-day cross-country trip from Reno in Nevada to Daytona Beach in Florida with my son. It's not just any bar, to be fair, as Liam's Pub, as it's known, is named in honour of one of William's old firefighter friends who left us way too soon. Now, you won't find Liam's Pub on Google Maps or listed on Yelp, and that's because it's built in William's house, and it was an honour to sit and chat with him, overlooked by over 200 fantastic bottles of fine Irish whiskey. It'll be no surprise to you that we chatted for ages and talked about William's Irish whiskey journey, the growth of the Irish whiskey industry in recent years, Irish whiskey pricing in Nevada and the wider US. And we went down a few rabbit holes too, talking about the great work done by Barry Chandler of Stories and Sips and Irish whiskey experiences, as well as talking about one of the finest Irish pubs in the US, McMullan's in Las Vegas. And we talked about all of this as we sipped on William's current favourite Irish whiskey, which is the PX edition from Redbreast. And truth be told again, it happens to be one of my favourites too. Listen along. Fáilte a rash to my favourite Irish, and we always host this from a bar, but this is a pretty special bar. William, we're at Liam's. We're in Liam's Pub today.
Liam's Pub today.
So I'm in northern Nevada with William Glass, known to those of you who love your Irish whiskey on Instagram as Nevada Drams, and he has very kindly allowed me to come visit him here at his bar. I'll take a few pictures, although you've all seen the pictures on his Instagram account. William, thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. It's always fun to have people come visit the pub.
Yeah, it is. It's tucked away here in a little subdivision. Obviously, you geo-referenced it on Instagram. We're okay to share where we are with people.
So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we're in Gardnerville is it technically northern Nevada?
Yeah.
Okay.
Northwestern Nevada, Reno, Lake Tahoe area.
Okay, great. And I'm on a road trip, and I thought what better thing to do on a road trip on day one was to stop in and see you here and have a chat and a dram. So
yeah. Makes the drive go that much better.
That's the plan. So we're going to talk about your favourite Irish. We're going to talk about a lot of things over the next, I suppose, 20-30 minutes or so. But you have pulled a bottle of Redbreast PX edition off the shelf for us to sip over. So we should raise a glass and say our sláinte. Why this whiskey?
Well, I'm a Redbreast fan. I'm a big fan of all things pot still, and I think Redbreast certainly embodies what an Irish pot still whiskey should be in my mind. And the PX right now is it's pretty much an unbeatable whiskey. When you look at everything, all things being considered, costs, quality, right now I think the PX is probably one of the best whiskeys for the money out there.
Okay, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but we'll obviously talk about cost, value. Those are interesting words to use right now in regard to Irish whiskey.
Yeah. You have to talk about it nowadays. I mean, it's certainly become the forefront. I think the price has gotten in the way of the Irish whiskey, unfortunately.
Now, we'll get into, we'll jump right into it. We're at Liam's Pub here. We're at the bar here at Liam's Pub. Obviously, folks should know this is in your house. So if they look for Liam's Pub on Google, they're not going to find it. So can you tell us the story behind the naming of the bar?
Absolutely. I'm a retired firefighter, spent my entire adult life as a firefighter, and one of my good friends. We started our careers here locally, and both went on to Vegas. Back in, I guess, 2001, end of 2001, he came down with cancer, and he fought it, and then he succumbed to the cancer in December of 2003. And so right after that, my wife allowed me to put a bar in the house. And so I said, well, guess what? We're going to name it after him, and it'll be called Liam's Pub. So my name's William, and so everybody thinks Liam is me, and it is not me. It is not named after me. It is named after another William, William Harnedy. And so it will forevermore be known as Liam's Pub.
Okay, and thank you for your service. And obviously you've named a bar in honour of Liam, so we'll thank him for his service. You told me before when I arrived in here that you weren't really an Irish whiskey drinker before that time.
No, I was not a hard alcohol drinker at all. I was a beer guy. Started out with Foster's.
Okay.
A friend of mine had a keg of it in his house. One of the first times I'd ever seen an actual keg in a private residence, and a good friend of mine, and he liked Foster's, so we would sit in his garage and drink Foster's. And then eventually I moved on to Guinness, and that became my favorite. They opened up an Irish pub in Las Vegas, the very first one there, and so I would in and I would drink my Guinness, and that was it. And then what happened was when Liam passed, one of the last things he said was, for my birthday, I want you guys to go over to Ireland. He was born in Ireland, lived in Ireland, and then moved over here. He said, I want you to go back, see the family, and raise a pint for me. And so that following year in 2004, a group of us got together and went over to Ireland. That was my first trip ever, and one of my good friends that came with us said, hey, got to try an Irish whiskey. And I said, I do not like whiskey at all, because up to that point my experience was Jack Daniels as a kid in school.
Okay.
And, you
were scarred from
Yeah, exactly. I don't like it. It's horrible stuff. And my friend said, no, you've got to try it. It's not what you think. And I said, no, I'm not a whiskey. He's like, you're in Ireland. You have to try Irish whiskey. So he bought me an Irish whiskey, and I tried it. And I went, wow, that's nothing like I remember. This is actually good. And he's like, I told you. And at the time I didn't know what it was, and he told me it was Bushmills Blackbush.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I've never heard of it before, but man, this is pretty nice. And so for the rest of the trip, I lived on Guinness and Blackbush. And then when I got home, that became a staple in the house.
So Guinness was the main course, and the Blackbush.
And the Blackbush, yeah. What did he explained? It's called a 1-in-1, right?
Okay.
You've got your pint and your.
There's different expressions in different parts of the country.
Right.
Yeah.
He called it a 1-in-1, and I said, okay. And so when I got home, it became a staple in the house. And then one day, a group of us got together after work, and we went into an Irish pub in Las Vegas, in New York, called Nine Fine Irishmen. And we went in, and I ordered a Blackbush, and the man behind the bar was Irishman, robe, the whole thing.
Okay.
And I said, I'll have a Bushmills Blackbush. And he said, not in this pub, you won't.
Oh, no, here we go.
You will not I will not serve you that Protestant whiskey. And I said, I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. We need Protestant whiskey. It's Irish whiskey. He said, no, it's not. He said, it's not from the Republic. It's from the North. It's English. It's Prod whiskey. I won't serve it to you. And I'm like, I have no idea what this man is talking about. None. And I'm like, does that mean you're not going to serve me whiskey? I'm like, what in the hell? This is strange. And he said, tell you what, I'm going to give you a whiskey from the Republic. And he said, it's the same price as the Blackbush. And he said, you'll like it better. And he said, if you don't, it's on the house. If you don't like it, I'll give it to you.
Okay.
And he said, and then I'll serve you your Protestant whiskey. And I was like, okay, I already knew how this was going to go. Of course I'm going to hate it, because if I hate it, it's free. Perfect. I know how this is going to go. And so he serves it up, and I drink it, and it was amazing. The skies parted, the angels sang. I saw a bit of God there, and I was like, oh, wow, this. He said, I told you. I said, what is it? He said, well, it's from the Republic. It's a Catholic whiskey. It's called Redbreast. And I'm like, boy, those Catholics know what they're doing. I had no idea about that whole, sectarian thing. And I'm like, this is amazing. This tastes nothing like, the Bushmills.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is it so different? I mean, everything was totally different. He's like, I said, I thought everything being the same, Irish whiskey is just Irish whiskey. And he's like, oh no. And then he took time to explain to me that was a blend. This is a pot still whiskey. And he had to explain to me what a pot still whiskey was. I'm like, aren't they all made in pot stills? He's like, yeah, but it's a style of whiskey,
exactly,
not what it's made in. And once he took the time, he must have spent half an hour with me.
Okay.
Explaining to me the differences in Irish whiskey, single malts, pot stills, blends. And I was like, I had no idea. And so in the fire department, I'm a hazmat guy, so I'm a chemistry guy. I love this. And I'm like, this is chemistry. This is cool. And then I fell down the rabbit hole. And I started reaching out and finding other whiskeys and the differences and what made them different. And by my nature, I love to read. And so I started reading and I realized, oh, this is not just one or two whiskeys. This is huge. And then this happened.
So going back to that time, that would have been 2004-ish?
4 and 5-ish, right in there. Yeah.
So still only 3 distilleries on the island,
right,
and you've referenced 2 of them.
Right.
Obviously the Redbreast made at Middleton, and Cooley would have been at that time making juice for a lot of own label and various things, and nothing really being done under an own label for themselves. There wasn't really a lot of selection, in truth be told, or am I wrong?
I mean, when you look at actual distilleries, sure, you were limited to those 3 really. But when you looked at labels, there was a bit more out there at the time. I mean, you had all the Middleton products that you had. I mean, the Jameson, the Powers, Patties, Redbreast, all of those things, Middleton, the spot whiskeys. So there was quite a few labels just coming from there. And then obviously Bushmills, you had, everything they had, but you still had, your Tullamore Dews and things like that. So there was a few more out there. I mean, obviously not
what we have today.
Not like today by any means, but there was really no shortage of whiskeys at that time, because I think that was kind of at the beginning of the whole growth stage. Was Jameson was starting to release different varieties of things here in the States. So, as they came out, I would be the first guy waiting in line to, hey, what is it? I remember when Jameson Gold, the Gold label came out. I remember, oh wow, that's something totally different from Jameson. I gotta go get that. And so yeah, there was some. I mean, obviously not, like I said, to the extent there is now.
But that was, I suppose, the beginnings of what we've seen over the last number of years was happening.
Right then, because literally by 2010, you had a lot more access, and by then, the internet obviously had a massive impact, because now you found out what was available where, not just in your own area, where you could go find things. And at that point, we had started making trips, my friends and I, back to Ireland once a year, for my friend's birthday, for Liam's birthday. And so I would read up on what was coming out. And, and this is before you couldn't bring liquids on the airplane. And I remember, I think it was my 2nd or 3rd year coming back, I think just in my little duffel bag, I had like 20 bottles of whiskey. Not even in my pack luggage, in my duffel bag. And so, and so for me, it was easier because I knew I was going back once a year. So all year, I put my list together of the things I want to find. And
we, at that time, were you able to get in touch with, say, one of the retailers there and have them hold you a bottle or buy it ahead of time?
No, I didn't know anybody at the time, which is interesting. So I've had friends in the Dublin Fire Brigade for a lot of years, and they were just my firefighter friends, not realizing that as years went on, a good friend of mine, I'll drop his name, Decky Rice, good friend of mine, I'd known him for 4 or 5 years. And we got talking about whiskey one day, and he's like, oh, you like Irish whiskey? I'm like, oh, yeah, probably at the time, I think I had 30 or 40 bottles. And he was like, oh, well, he was, I think, he was a member of the Irish Whiskey Society at that point. He might maybe a secretary or something involved there. And he's like, oh no. I'm like, you're with the Irish Whiskey Society? Oh, well then everything changed because now I had access and knowledge. And then, yeah, he helped me. Hey, look, we see these things coming down the line. You might want to be, okay, would you pick me up a bottle and hold on to it when I'm over next? I'll pay you for it. Yeah. So that's kind of how it worked. It was not me really knowing the retailers so much.
But having somebody on the ground.
Having somebody, yeah, having Decky there. And I can honestly say without him being involved in my Irish whiskey journey, I would not be here.
Okay.
You know, he very much facilitated all that, much to my wife's chagrin. Yes, I mean we could have had a house on a lake somewhere, but nope, I have whiskey.
But your wife Sonia did share with me earlier that she does enjoy a dram.
Oh.
So that makes that side of it a little easier.
A lot easier. She'll complain about it until I pour her a measure, and then she's like, "Oh, this okay, you did real well. You did good."
So, a couple of things I wanted to talk with you about, given your knowledge, obviously, of the industry, having seen it grown from the early noughties all the way to today. We'll go down the rabbit hole of pricing in a little bit, but you're now retired from your service with the fire service, but that hasn't stopped you kind of combining your love of Irish whiskey and a little bit of education that you do. So you do some of that.
I'm very, very fortunate that I am what they term the Irish whiskey host for McMullan's Irish Pub in Las Vegas. That was my local pub that I used to just hang out in. And Brian McMullan, the owner, and I became friends. And I was in there a couple times a week. And he knew that I was really into Irish whiskey and I was learning more and more. And he asked me one time, he said, look, I have an Irish whiskey fundraiser coming up, a tasting and a dinner. And would you be interested in going? And I said, absolutely, yeah. I'll buy a ticket and I'll go. He's like, yeah, just go. So I went. And I sat and I listened to the man talking about the various whiskeys and everything and got done. Had a good time. And the next time I was in the pub, Brian said, what'd you think? I said, it was fun. I enjoyed that. And he said, well, did you learn anything new? You know, did that man teach you? I said, you know, I'm not trying to be that guy, but I was like, not really. I mean, he said, so. He said, I want an honest answer. He said, do you know more than that guy? And so, like I said, you don't want to be that guy.
You're trying to be modest.
And I'm like, okay. He's like, I can see it in your face. You know more than that guy. I said, yeah. I said, honestly, I think he's just a representative from the distributor. He's reading off, you know, the labels essentially. Yeah. And he said, do you think you could do a better job?
Now he's laying down the gauntlet.
And I said, I don't know. I've never done it before. You know, and so in the fire service at that point, I was a training officer. So I was used to talking in front of people, but about fire department stuff, not whiskey. And he said, well, we have another fundraiser coming up, just a tasting, not a dinner, for St. Baldrick's. That is their big charitable organization that they support there, which funds research into childhood cancer. So Brian McMullan had a daughter that passed away from cancer when she was just a very young child. So they support that. And I said, yeah, absolutely. You know, you guys support this. I will donate my time. I will come in and I will teach. And so he picked the whiskeys we were going to do. And to this day, I still don't even remember what they were. So I went home. Oh, yeah, I happened to have them on the shelf. Yeah, I tasted them, did everything, wrote down some notes and talked. And we got done with the class, and everybody loved it. And they were like, you need to do this on a more regular basis. And I'm like, well, you know, I was just here doing the tasting thing, you know, doing
for the good cause.
The thing, yeah. And so Brian approached me, actually, after I'd retired. I had already retired. I'd had my retirement party in his pub. And he said, I want to start a whiskey club. He had a small one there. That was just a few friends that got together and brought a bottle in. And he had asked me to be part of that originally because he said, these people know nothing about whiskey. They just want to get together and use my pub. And I need somebody that has. And he had asked me about it. And then that kind of faded away. And then he said, now that that's done, how would you run a whiskey club? And I said, well, let me call a friend of mine. So I called Decky again.
Okay.
He's been involved. How does this work? And he told me, I said, yeah. So I called Brian back. I said, yeah, I can do this. I don't see why we can't. And he says, I want this to be a big thing. I said, let's do it. And so now going on 5 years ago, we put together McMullan's Whiskey Club.
Every month?
Every month, every third Friday.
Okay.
We feature 3 whiskeys, throw a little food in there, and
so if
make it an event.
Folks are passing through Las Vegas every third Friday.
Every third Friday. The only time that changes will change in March, because that third Friday weekend is St. Patrick's Day, and we are not going to get in the way of that. That place is a madhouse.
That's where they make some money that sustains them through the rest of the year. I just so folks know who are listening to this, I will share links to all of this in the notes of the podcast so that people can find it. And we're here in Gardnerville in northern Nevada, so obviously you've got to do an overnight when you go down to McMullan's, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I have 2 sons. They both still live there in Las Vegas, so I stay with my family. I get to see my kids and my grandkids, so it works out perfect.
Good. And quick personal aside, how old are the grandkids?
My grandson, I have one boy. He is 4 years old.
And folks won't see this on the podcast, but there's a big smile on William's face right now.
I love that little man. Yeah, so when the fans will appreciate this when they said, "What are you going to name? Do you have a name for the child yet?" And originally, so it's my youngest boy that has the grandson. My oldest boy, unfortunately, his wife can't have kids.
Okay.
And they wanted to name their child Liam after Liam's poem, and because that was their uncle. And so I said, well, what are you going to name him? He said, well, I spoke with William, and we're not going to name him Liam. We won't. But that's going to be his middle name.
Okay.
So should something happen, they could ever have a child, Liam would still be available. I said, so what are you going to call him? He said, we're going to call him Jameson. I said, son, you realize you don't have to do that. You don't have to. He's like, no, we love the name. It has nothing to do with you. I'm like, yeah, sure, right.
Yeah, don't believe
He's
that.
like, no, we will call him Jameson Liam. And so my grandson is Jameson Liam.
Wow, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah. So again, like I said, we'll share details on that place in Las Vegas for folks who, when they're passing through, they can. And I'm guessing there's a great selection of Irish whiskey at McMullan's.
The best, actually, in the United States. They have the largest selection of Irish whiskey in the U.S.
Wow, that is some claim. As I touched on at the start of this, we are headed there after we leave you, so I suspect that's
going to be a great day.
It'll be an even greater night. So let's talk about the whiskey we're tasting. So we've got the Redbreast PX. This is batch 2.
Batch 2, correct.
That right? Now, I've had batch 1. You and I talked about this before we hit record. You bought a sizable quantity of batch 1.
I did when it came out, about a case of it.
And it didn't last long, apparently.
Did not. All my friends. So we, as you can see, with a pub like this, I have a lot of friends over. This is, the biggest bar in, 50, 60 miles at least. So I've got friends over here all the time. Why would you go to the local pub when you can come here when you got a bigger selection and the cost is much cheaper? So yeah, we do a lot of whiskey stuff over here. Okay. And so it doesn't last. When all my friends got a chance to try that PX, they were like, oh Lord, this is.
Yeah, so we're trying, obviously, what you've shared, your favorite Irish, because this is your. Although I guess PX has been around for, I'm going to say, a couple of years. Batch 1 was a couple of years back.
Yeah, Batch 1 was 2 years ago.
So this is obviously is one that has stuck as a favorite with you. And when you poured this for me a few minutes ago, I put my nose in it, and just the nose on this is absolutely exquisite.
It absolutely is. It's the fruits, everything about this is just. Like I said, I truly do believe this is one of the best values in Irish whiskey right now. Now, value's relative. It's still $100+ a bottle, depending on where you get it. But when you look at the cost of Irish whiskey and what you're getting, one of the better values.
So let's use that as the perfect segue to jump into value and pricing, because I know in the Irish whiskey community here stateside, it's a massive conversation right now. You talked to me about buying Redbreast in retail in 08, 09 for about $38 a bottle. I remember Redbreast in 2016 in Costco at $35 a bottle.
Yeah.
You and I both agreed that we think Redbreast 12-year-old is still a value in the 55 to 60, although you reckon it's a little bit higher here.
Yeah,
in Nevada?
Nevada's tough. It's we don't get good prices on whiskey here. We really don't. You would think with everything that Nevada is known for that it would be the place to go for booze, but it's not.
And why is that? Is there, because obviously people who don't know, there's no state income tax here in Nevada. So, but we all know that the money has to come from somewhere. Yeah. So is liquor taxed a little higher here?
Not taxed. So I'm going to be totally politically incorrect here. There's two things that the mob still run in the state of Nevada.
Wow.
Casinos aren't one of them. It's the liquor and the taxis. I will make no bones about it. Southern Wine and Spirits has a hold on Nevada, run by a gentleman. I won't mention his name, Lou Ruvo. Absolute criminal. You can edit that out if you choose. But there are 3 distributors in Nevada. He owns all 3 of them. So he has the chokehold on the state.
Okay.
And he decides what they're going to sell things at. And when you look at recommended retail price, he's getting secondary market prices for his stuff. And he doesn't even really sell certain things directly to the pubs as he should. When the original Batch 1 PX came out, it was never made available to any of the pubs in town. It was only sold through Total Wine. They allocated all the stock from Southern Wine
into one retailer
to Total Wine.
Interesting. Obviously, 2 things they're doing there. They're firstly, they're making it easy on themselves because it's one delivery to a number of stores. I don't know how they break that down. Whereas to bars, it's by the case.
Right.
So there's that. But they also then have controlled the supply chain.
Absolutely, they have.
From top to bottom.
It's tough. I mean, and that's the problem. When I can go over the hill, I can drive 2.5 hours over the hill into California, go down to Folsom, and save $20 on a bottle of Redbreast.
And there's rumor that there's a decent wine and spirit store in Folsom.
There's a couple good ones.
Yeah, I know Folsom Wine and Spirits.
Folsom Wine and Spirits, absolutely.
They do, to their credit, they do a great job with Irish whiskey.
Yes.
And other whiskies, but Irish, I know, obviously you and I are in the Irish whiskey space. They do a great job. And I believe also ship to most parts of the state.
They sure do. Yeah. And so, yeah, they've made that a lot more accessible because unfortunately we just don't have the accessibility here because of that control. A great example is this Redbreast PX. It's available at Total Wine in the southern half of the state, but you won't find it at Total Wine in Reno. Wow. We get very, very few things up here. It stays down where the demand is, and that's...
So I'm going to tie that back together with why your bar here is popular with your friends, because you have a phenomenal selection here.
Yeah, and it's funny. I had a friend over last night, and I poured her a measure, and she said, "Okay, I love this." And she always has preface, "Is this something I can get here?" And the answer is no.
and that's I suppose is a struggle for you want to show off what they are doing really well in Ireland, but it's not accessible.
Not accessible. It's getting better. I mean, honestly, like I said, the distributorship makes it more difficult. It's just rough. It really is. And so I'm fortunate enough that I have access to a lot of stuff, and I do a lot of stuff online. Yeah. The majority of these bottles that you see here were never purchased retail. Once again, I'll name drop Irish Whiskey Auctions.
They do a great job.
Yeah. Without them, I have probably only a half as many bottles as I do now.
There's something special about delivery day when it's that brown box with red and white fragile tape.
Yes, it's like Christmas once a month. Literally, I love those folks.
And they
Anthony and Katie are just amazing folks, and every time I get a chance to see them, I got to give them both big hugs as much as they hate it. And I love you people. I really do.
They do a great job. They are loved and respected by people both sides of the Atlantic. They do a great job.
They do. And I was fortunate enough, I got to meet them in 2019 when they were just getting started. I was over there for my first Whiskey Live in 2019. and had an opportunity to meet them, and just genuine people.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't know me from Adam, and just some stupid American over there wanting to learn more about Irish whiskey, and they were just the most accommodating, nice, genuine people.
They are. And where they get the unending energy from, I do not know, because they are just bundles of energy.
Opened a pub on top of it. Now they run Irish whiskey experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, my word.
Yeah.
It's just...
And you say, use the quote "dumb American." I would, you're saying that in jest, obviously. I know that the industry is incredibly grateful to America and the Americans for its support. As we know, about 50% of all Irish whiskey, across all of it, gets sold here in the States. And there's people like you and I and dozens of others of us who will search out those hard to find bottles in Ireland that'll never make it here, and then you get them sent to Dundalk and it gets shipped over here. And I know they're very grateful for the business, both the auction house and the shipping side of it. And they've, to their credit, they've created a wonderful business out of it, and they're to be saluted for it. Tying together two or three of those things, William, you've got some Redbreast Dream casks here. Now we talked about that earlier. That and pricing when they come together, that really is an area that's gone crazy, and you've got a lot of personal experience in this space.
Yeah, it's funny. You want to support Irish whiskey. I think the goal of most people that understand anything about Irish whiskey in the United States is we need to replace Scotch with being the primary imported whiskey. And the only problem with that is we've created such a market that the prices have just become ludicrous, honestly. And that's too bad. When you talk about the original Dream cask, the 32-year-old. Well, I guess the original, if you think about it, is the Manoa Lav, but the one that was actually declared the Dream cask was the 32-year-old. And I was unfortunate in that I did not get
the original Dream cask.
The original Dream cask, and my name was not drawn in the lottery, to be able to purchase one.
So it's always been a ballot or a lottery?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so I reached out to some friends of mine, once again, Decky, and said,
okay,
hey, look, I would love to can I get my hands on one of these things? And so I went over there, and he said, I got a guy that's willing to sell you a bottle. And I believe at the time, it wasn't much. I think it was €500, maybe €600 that I paid for it, which is not that high above what they were paying for it, through the lottery system. And, that's a lot of money for a whiskey back then. I mean, it was. But what a great value, considering the liquid that was in that bottle. To this day, I will tell you that is the best whiskey I've ever had. Ever.
Okay.
The Dreamcast 32-year-old.
Okay.
That is... And nowadays, you look, I know that Irish Whiskey Auctions has an auction going on now. I believe there's a couple bottles up, and they will go over $2,000. They're €2,000 a bottle.
So on that, when you start getting into that strata of Irish whiskey, very, very small quantity, highly sought after, reasonably high ticket price to start with,
right.
And then it multiplies 3, 4, 5 times in the secondary market. Your philosophy when it comes to whiskey like that, are you a collector, a keeper, or are you an opener and sharer?
So I'd like you to look at all the bottles. Do you see anything that still has the foil on it?
A quick pass of the, I suppose, 200 and something bottles, and maybe 1 or 2, but I know they've just...
And those are just replacements I haven't opened yet. No, everything is for drinking. I do not have any bottles in this house for collecting. If there's a bottle that still has a foil on it, it means that I finished the original bottle, and that's a backup we haven't got to. Or in this case, if you look there, I've got a bottle of the Redbreast 10-year-old. Somebody went to the distillery, got me a bottle, had my name printed on it. That one's not going to be open.
Yeah.
But having said that, I do have a 10-year-old above that is open.
Of course you do.
So yeah, there are whiskeys that I won't open, but they will never make it to the secondary market. That is not, I don't believe in that, not even a little bit. My philosophy on that is whiskey was designed to be enjoyed. What we're doing here, we're having a conversation, we're having a nice whiskey. It's a beautiful day. It's not like art. Art you can look at and you can appreciate. Well, if I drain the liquid out of that and I fill it full of iced tea and I put a new foil on it, how are you going to know that's iced tea? The answer is you're not. It's not like art. You can't appreciate it by looking at it.
Yeah, it has to be sipped and savored.
It has to be, you got to nose it. You got to have that smell, like you said. Oh, the nose on that. Exactly.
And it's interesting. Obviously, a lot of people, the vast majority of whiskey drinkers, will struggle with a €1,500 to €2,500 price tag for something in the auction market. I did have an interesting conversation a number of months ago with somebody who was a collector, and they talked about. I said, how do you justify those prices? And they said, it's the experience when somebody buys that and they open it. Let's say they pay $2,000, and they open it in the company of 3, 4, 5, 6 great friends, and it caps off an incredible evening. To them, that's worth the money, right. The experience. And that's how he justified selling bottles in the secondary market. You and I obviously share the same philosophy, which is that whiskey is to be shared now with friends and to enjoy it.
For me, the biggest part of Irish whiskey, and it's evolved with me over the years, is the stories behind Irish whiskey. That's what it is. I love the whiskey, the nose, the palate, the finish, whatever you want to say about it. But it's the stories behind it, right? The story behind Redbreast, it evolved out of necessity, right? It ended up in sherry barrels because they couldn't get anything else. That's how it became a traditional style of whiskey, right? Pot still, why? Because, we're going to use unmalted barley because we're not paying that tax. Exactly. You know what I mean? There's so many great stories, the Powers stories. I mean, Tullamore Dew, DEW, where those initials came from. Paddy's. The guy started out as a worker there and became one of the best salesmen. Just the stories behind Irish whiskey, to me,
one of the funniest
what makes it what it is.
One of the funniest stories is going back to Jameson, and you've got some lovely Jameson here on the shelf. And going back to what you touched on earlier on this about Protestant whiskey, Catholic whiskey, John Jameson is Protestant. It's a Lutheran, for goodness sake, and we all love him and what he did. And then of course he's I'm sure you're aware, him and his wonderful wife had 16 kids, and as a result there was the Jameson Empire, which came from that, and other Jameson distilleries back in the day. So yeah, you're right. The Powers story is lovely. As a Dubliner, Powers being the iconic Dublin distillery that obviously was made in Corks in '76 or so. But you're right, I think, and it's stories of the whiskies, but then it's also the stories that we tell as we sit here sipping on a whiskey. Your story. The fact that I'm at Liam's pub at the bar with you, which is paying homage to your friend who passed, that's part of the story as well.
Yeah, it's...
And pulling stories around, turns out I did some digging through your Instagram before I came here because I wanted to, not that we would ever have any shortage of things to talk about, but you and I were both back in Dublin in May. We were both at Whiskey Live. Yes. And we were both in the Redbreast Masterclass, along with about 60 or 70 other people.
Yeah, correct, yes.
That was my first Whiskey Live, but it was your...
second or... I think my first one was 2019. And then, of course, we had COVID.
Yeah.
So I don't remember how many we missed, but I've been to every one they've had since 19. Okay. So that's 2 or 3, maybe. Okay.
And we're here now in January, almost February 24. Yep. You're going this year?
We're going again this year.
Okay.
Yep. We're doing that. We're trying to plan a trip through Irish Whiskey Experiences.
Okay.
What they call their whiskey buses.
Yeah.
We want to do, they do ones, where they invite everyone, but we're trying to do one through the pub. And we're scheduling that for the week before.
Good idea.
So that we end our whiskey bus trip the day before Whiskey Live. So that everybody, all of our people that were in the club that decided to go to this thing, you get to have an amazing week, getting to do things most normal folks don't get to do in terms of Irish whiskey. And then you top it off with Whiskey Live. So, yeah. Really
fantastic. And geographically, any ideas where that whiskey bus will be?
Yeah, it's the south.
Okay.
We're spending a couple days in Dublin. Then we're going to go south towards Waterford. We're going to visit, I believe, hopefully, W.D. O'Connell, Dahi O'Connell.
Fantastic.
He's going to open up his place for us. And then into Cork for 4 days, and of course doing everything that is Cork.
And of course, knowing Irish whiskey experiences, and one of the partners in it being Barry, he has to take you to what he would consider the real capital of Ireland.
That's right. There's Cork, and then there's not Cork. Yeah. I was on Whiskey Bus with them last year, and we learned that very, very early on. There's Cork and not Cork.
And it's you know what you've described there, going down kind of like the east coast into the south and across to Cork. You know, loads to see.
Yes.
That's, I think, I suppose it's one of the problems now with the boom in distilleries, you know, with there being almost 50 distilleries. You literally can set out a 5-day agenda in different parts of the island, which, as we know, is not that big. And you can fill 5 days very quickly in and around Belfast, you know, north of Galway up to the northwest, goodness, in the southwest, in Limerick and Cork and Kerry and you know, West Waterford. No end of things to do. So yeah, you're going to have a fantastic time.
Yeah, well, what this closely mirrors is I was on a Whiskey Bus tour with them in August, and this is almost identical to what we did. I had such a great time there, and the experience was second to none. You know, me being involved with Irish whiskey, I know a number of folks in the industry, and I get to do things most average folks don't get to do. But what we got to do on that Whiskey Bus was incredible. Experiences that you just can't believe. And so when we wanted to put something together for the pub, I reached out to Barry, Anthony, and Lauren and said, hey, look, can we do something very similar to what we just did? She's like, well, you just went. Why would you want to do the same thing? I said, it's not for me. It's for the people in the club. Yeah. Because this is things that they'll be able to talk about for the rest of their lives. Because it's so amazing. You know, one of the things we got to do, and we visited the Clonakilty distillery. Mm-hmm. They took us out to the barley fields, which are right there on the edge of right on the coast, right on Galliot, right there. And they served us one of the most amazing meals and a lunch out there. They had catered out there in the barley field, drinking whiskey.
Overlooking the Atlantic.
Just amazing. And you're drinking whiskey, which came from the barley you're walking on.
Yeah.
Amazing. Where else do you get to do that? So when I got back, Brian, the owner of McMullan's, had been wanting to do a trip. I said, look, they've put this company together where they want to organize trips. I spoke with them. This is a trip I think we should do. And he was like, let's do that. Yeah. So
to their credit, I know Barry is a big driving force behind it, but also Anthony and Lauren as well. They show their guests incredible experiences.
They're great.
As you said, experiences of a lifetime.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Barry's. When he first started Stories and Sips, or actually even before that, it was Irish Whiskey Fans of America and all that. I knew he was going to be a force to be reckoned with. At the time, he was fairly new in Irish whiskey, but he has such a passion. I mean, great example is he's known for his turtleneck.
Exactly, exactly. Is this one of his?
That's his. Yeah. So during COVID, Irish Whiskey Auctions, Anthony Sheely hosted an auction online, or where we were all together on the phone, on the computer, and just a bunch of drunk guys bidding on things that came up to raise money. And I can't remember, was it Capuchin Charity? I don't remember. It's for one of them. And somebody mentioned that, you know, at the time, you know, Barry's thing was the turtlenecks. And it mentioned, you know, Barry, you really need to put up one of your turtlenecks. I said, well, Barry, if you put it up, I'll get it. I don't care where we end up on price. And I'm going to hang it in my pub. He's like, you wouldn't dare. I said, oh, I will. Absolutely, I will. And so, of course, this has been going on for hours, and we're all in our cups, and fine. And then so Anthony donated a bunch of, he says it's a mystery box. It's a bunch of stuff I have. I'm going to throw in the box. And so I'm saying, okay. So we ran the thing up, and I eventually got the bed. I said, Barry, you understand this is going to go hang in Liam's pub now? He's like, I bet you it doesn't. So it showed up, and
you framed it.
I did.
Is that a note from Barry in there?
So that came when one of the very first things that he did is Stories and Sips. You could buy bar mats and stickers and things of that nature.
Little swag.
And a glass, yeah. So I'd love to support the guy, right? You know, I knew at the time things were going to go well, and I want to support you. So I bought it, and he wrote a little note in there thanking me for supporting his, you know, burgeoning company.
Yeah.
And so, he didn't sign the jersey for me, but at least I had the card, so I threw that in
We'd
there.
have to get him out to the West Coast, and this could be one of his stops.
We've talked. I would love to have him come for one of our whiskey club nights, and so.
But I know he's incredibly busy in Ireland doing.
He's doing the whiskey.
No,
he's
definitely
preaching the word of God.
Yeah, no, he does a great job at it.
He does.
I a bit like, you know, Anthony and his energy. I don't know where Barry gets the energy from too, because and I like you, I'm a member of the club. I have been for almost 2 years now, and I think, okay, well, he's just absolutely rocked it with that last. So the, you know, the blending that he did for a release that's to come with that was I didn't win the lottery to get the blending
I was
components.
fortunate enough, yes.
But I was there on the tasting to listen to people go through it. I thought, what a great experience.
Yes.
How can you top that? Oh, well, now we're going to taste with Dave McCabe from Middleton, and we're going to, some Redbreast.
Yes.
So to his credit, he keeps coming up with these high-end, very engaged experiences that obviously I enjoy, you enjoy, and obviously dozens, if not hundreds of us enjoy it. And he's encouraging more of us to. I see you have 2 bottles of the W.D. O'Connell back here that you bought, I'm guessing from him, the Amontillado and an Oloroso, or?
Yeah, and when we were on the whiskey bus in August, we went and visited Dahi, and we got to bottle our own, the whole thing from start to finish, bottle, run it through. He'd ask, hey, look, it's only him and his friend actually, and his wife essentially, that do everything there for W.D. O'Connell. And he said, look, since you guys are here, I want to give you an experience of running a bottling line, because with you folks here, you can do in 20 minutes what will take us 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And we'd love to have you help. Yeah, oh, absolutely. So you run through and you sanitize the bottle, you fill the bottle, you cork the bottle, you label the bottle, you put the wax on the bottle. And then as we're getting ready to leave, he says, I want you all to turn around. We turn around to the bottling line, and he's got all the bottles, and he says, I hope you remembered what number bottle that you bottled, because they're yours. They're part of this experience. So one of those is actually, and Dahi signed a little deal on there for you and everything. So it was, what a great experience.
Yeah, no, I've picked up a number of the shipments or offerings that Barry's done, some really, really fun. And I think for me, what that highlights is what is to come in the pipeline of Irish whiskey over the next few years. There are some super fun things coming down.
It is, and the experimentation, the Amontillado casks. I mean, things that you were unheard of 10 years ago. Heck, even 3 or 4 years ago was unheard of. I love that.
Yeah.
I love the experimentation, and I have to say, I think the people that kind of led the way was Meth and Madness.
Yeah.
You know, that was a very large distillery that didn't have to prove anything to anybody. You know, Middleton is Mecca for Irish whiskey. And they went out on a limb and said, we're going to build this micro distillery, and we're going to let our junior distillers, our apprentice distillers, come up and just do stuff. And I think that was kind of the gateway to everybody said, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it?
Well, and they started using different grains, using different barrel finishes.
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the things that they started, and now you look at what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
No, it's just amazing.
It's definitely a fun time to be involved. Talking about that, and obviously, if you'll allow me, I'll take a couple of pictures here that I'll share with folks. But I see an extension to Liam's Bar in the future. You might have to get a permit from the local, because if there's all these new, it's chock-a-block here with incredible whiskey, and obviously way more to come over the next number of years.
Yeah.
You're going to have to.
Yeah, that's probably, I've run out of room. I don't know what I'm going to, I have to hit the lottery is what I have to do, so I can buy a bigger house so I can put it in a bigger bar. It's the only way it's going to go.
Okay, I love that positive attitude. Yeah. Play the lottery, so you will win it, and the first thing you'll do is extend the bar.
Big house.
Big house, big bar. William, with that, we've been gassing away here for quite a while. I'm going to, firstly, I want to thank you for your hospitality. We've never met in person before.
Never have.
But I appreciate you inviting me into your home and sharing a glass. I enjoyed the wonderful chat, and providing us with a wonderful pit stop between Reno and Las Vegas.
It's a very boring drive between there and in here. So
This definitely
got to
puts-
get you fortified.
This definitely puts a smile on the face. So yeah, I suppose we should toast again, and we'll turn this off. So, Sláinte, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you've made it this far, I want to say Gurav Mila Mahakat, or thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you have time in your busy schedule, I'd be grateful if you could take a few minutes to leave a rating and maybe even a review, as this helps spread the Irish whiskey love. You'll find more episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts, and you'll find some of these podcasts as videos on my website at irishwhiskeylad.com. That's Irish Whiskey with an E, LAD.com. Until next time, Sláinte.